I'm Keith Olbermann, and this is The Resistance. Kellyanne Conjob says if the media continues to call the press secretary's lies, lies, and by extension, if it continues to call the president's lies, lies, quote, we're going to have to rethink our relationship here. Fine. Do not interview Kellyanne Conjob. Press Secretary Spicer comes out for what is allegedly a White House press briefing and shouts a bitter, angry statement at the media and then refuses to take any questions. Stop carrying his press briefings live on television. Trump says the media, quote, are among the most dishonest human beings on earth, right? Stop covering his speeches live. Use a delay, employ a team of fact checkers, play his rants. Each time he lies, stop the tape, state the facts. Resume the tape, wait for the next lie, stop the tape again, state the facts again. Do not participate in the Trump propaganda game. And do not reply to me that you are obligated to do so because otherwise you could be accused of delegitimizing the presidency, because it is impossible to delegitimize something that was never legitimate in the first place. And do not reply to me that you must cover these liars because of the marketplace of ideas or because of commercial competition. In short order, nobody who believes Trump or Conway or Spicer or any of the other pirates will be watching ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, BBC, MSNBC, C-SPAN, or anything similar anyway. In a time when democracy is being rapidly sabotaged by a lunatic president and his amoral flying monkeys like Conway and Spicer, your market, and incidentally your obligation as citizens in that bleeding democracy, your market and your obligation are identical: to identify the lies and refute them twice as often as they are told. The hardcore Trump crowd, the fascists, corporatists, racists, authoritarians, they're going to watch Fox and read Breitbart and watch and read the new ones, worse than Fox and worse than Breitbart, that are going to pop up in the weeks and months to come, and there isn't F all you can do about that. This was the exact scenario in the bygone days when George W. Bush was still widely believed about Iraq, and every television news operation decided it was going to wave the flag just like Fox News, or try to outdo Fox. One of them put Michael Savage on TV, and every one of them promptly got smoked in the ratings. And then some guy at MSNBC, I think it was, said, the emperor is not wearing any clothes. And all of a sudden, the truth started pouring out. And by the way, the hundreds of millions of dollars of profit started pouring in. The danger to our society of for-profit journalism, especially in television, has been evident ever since the fairness doctrine was eliminated and the FCC stopped enforcing the community service and equal time regulations. That's when you can start to begin to say as much as you wanted on television or radio about any controversial topic without ever being obligated to offer Floyd R. Turbo 2 minutes of airtime to give an editorial reply. But the blessing to our society of for-profit journalism, especially in television, has been evident ever since the backlash against Bush a decade ago. Being state-run television is profitable. Being anti-state-run television is nearly as profitable. To paraphrase the immortal Bill Hicks, the Gaslight Channel? Oh, they're going for that gaslight marketing dollar. That's a good market. They're very smart. Wait, the anti-Gaslight Channel? Ooh, you know what Keith's doing now? He's going for that righteous indignation dollar. That's a big dollar. A lot of people are feeling that indignation. We've done research. Huge market. He's doing a good thing. It would take a conscious and conscientious decision to leave those news consumers who believe in administration elected on, built on, and trading on nothing but lies. But it is also practice for a worse time that may be yet to come. The previous Republican administration exploited a terrorist attack in this country. It took the natural tendency at times of crisis of liberals to put aside party divisions, and the natural tendency at times of crisis of conservatives to exacerbate party divisions, and then multiplied all that by their Fox-led Republican media echo chamber, and then they insisted on something they branded patriotic bipartisanship, but which was in fact monopartisanship, in which they were to make all the decisions, and the role of Democrats was to acquiesce to them or be branded disloyal. And if they are given, or if they fabricate another such crisis, they will play the same card. You know, something happens about which, to quote Trump, I alone can fix it. Thus now and especially later, there must be channels and sites and newspapers that devote huge swaths of their resources to blasting back the truth towards the Trump lies factory. It must report the lies about healthcare, the lies about the release of tax returns, the lies and inevitable attempts to use the mighty mechanisms of government against Trump's critics. It must report the truths about broken promises to release tax returns and falsified government statistics and passive-aggressive influence peddling. It must learn, and it will learn, how much the Russians swung the election, even if it takes 4 years to learn it, and how many acts of war the Russians directed against us, and how much they had on Trump, and how much they expect him to deliver, and how many of the mainstream Republicans will remain loyal not to the Constitution of the United States, but to Vladimir goddamned Putin. And until all that is found out, it can simply report all day, every day, that the Russian investigation is still ongoing, exactly the way Fox News spent nearly 3 years insisting that Obama's birth certificate was still ongoing. Those who own the news media, especially in television, are timid types and by nature conservative, until being either of those things threatens their investments. Well, fellas, Trump has decided to destroy your investments. If you tell the absolute truth, he will try to bury you. If you tell his version and give airtime to his supporters, but you also have others there to fact-check him, he will still try to bury you. Appeasement will produce what appeasement always produces: the victims wasting the resources and time they should have used defending themselves. The good news for the news media is, in fact, this little garage band kind of series right here. As of this one, we will have done 65 commentaries under the banner of The Closer and The Resistance, and as of number 63 last week, we had crossed the threshold of 100 million views. That is an average of around 1,600,000 views per commentary, and 1,600,000 views of anything not only suggests there's a ready audience for the product in question, whether it's anti-Trump politics or learning how to tie your shoes. An average audience of 1,600,000 is larger than the average audience at CNN or MSNBC. So remember that thing before the election, Trump TV? Well, it is now time for anti-Trump TV. And it will make somebody at least $500 million in profits in the next 4 years, if he lasts 4 years. And yeah, oh, by the way, it also might be one of the few chances we have to stop the United States of America from fully descending into fascism, you know, in case that still matters to anybody. Resist. People of Syria and Iraq and France and Germany and Mexico and Canada and the world, permit me to apologize on behalf of the citizens of the United States of America for the unforgivable actions of the man who has assumed power here. I speak for those of us who, unlike Trump, unlike the sycophants who surround him, unlike the hate-filled souls and the conscience-optional bigots who applaud him, unlike the Russian puppeteers who may be manipulating him, I speak for those of us who have not forgotten and will not forget that we are the descendants of the immigrants, often the refugees. We are the modern equivalents of those whom this pig Trump has just banished and degraded and in many cases, likely, literally, sentenced to death. Our greatness, and more importantly, our goodness, has, since the cliche of the arrival at Plymouth Rock, stemmed entirely from people who came here from elsewhere. The only true natives of this continent have been the victims of persecution and marginalization and genocide. If this gargoyle Trump really believed in America first, he would lead the deportation of those who brutally stole these lands from their rightful inhabitants. Indeed, if there is anything this country can offer as mitigating evidence against our original sin, it is that the land our forefathers invaded became a place of freedom, a destination for those who literally had no other place to turn. We became great and greater and greatest because to these shores came a world of brave men and women who could not be certain it would be better here, but who knew it could not be worse than where they were. They gained a sanctuary, and we gained their courage and their dedication and their hard work and their belief that if life would not be better for them, it would be better for their children. In us, in this place, they saw the light of the world, and because of them, we became that light. And now Trump has extinguished it. He has extinguished the light of the world, not because it was necessary, not because it was protective, because it will almost certainly indeed prove the opposite, but because many of those who support him cried out for scapegoats and for people to hate because they believe a different religion, and for people to blame because they looked different. And in their hate, he, without conscience, soul, morality, he, capable of proudly mocking the tears of those stricken by the human cost of his cruelty over the weekend, saw only how to gain more power. He has extinguished the light of the world, not because he wanted to prevent terrorism nor reduce the flow of would-be terrorists, but because the political currency of 21st century America is making the gullible afraid, of convincing them that a foreigner lurks around every corner when the greatest risk of death to Americans is other Americans who have guns, period. The 7 countries to whose residence visas will not be issued are Iraq, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. From data researched by the libertarian think tank, the Cato Institute, the number of Americans killed in terrorism on American soil by people from those countries from 1975 through 2016 was none. The countries of the Middle East against which Trump did not act include the home nations of all the 9/11 hijackers and the San Bernardino attackers, Pakistan and the United States, and most cynically of all, those countries in which Trump has business dealings. None of Donald Trump's grandparents were born in this country. Virtually none of his supporters who style themselves as real Americans are not the descendants of immigrants or refugees. The nation they know, the things here that have given them life, has been built entirely by the children and grandchildren of exactly the kind of people whose banishment and punishment they now cheer. My great-great-grandfather was a blacksmith, and he came here from Hamburg in Germany, and he became a naturalized American citizen in 1854. Donald Trump's grandfather was a scared teenager, and he came here from Bremen in Germany, 60 miles from Hamburg, in 1885. Trump's grandfather was born with the name Friedrich, and once here he changed it to Frederick. My great-great-grandfather was born with the name Friedrich, and once here changed it to Frederick. 125 years after Frederick Olbermann got here, I became the first of his direct descendants to be able to afford to go to and graduate from college. And this is with me daily, and I consider myself the child of immigrants, and my eyes well with prideful tears that transcend time when I think of his sacrifices and his efforts and the abuse that he bore and the fact that I got to enjoy the fruits of his struggle. 132 years after Frederick Trump got here, his grandson betrayed him. Friday, he took a first step towards changing the law in such a way that his own grandfather would not have been certain to get a visa waiver to get into this country. And even if Frederick Trump had gotten here and gotten a green card, he still might not have been safe. For his own grandson and his chief of staff, the son of a woman who grew up in Sudan, initially they went after the green card holders. They locked out legal residents of this country in what may very well be interpreted as the early passive-aggressive stage of a kind of ethnic cleansing. And this Trump also betrayed every other immigrant and every other refugee and every other man or woman the world over who looked to us then or who have looked to us now and who believed we were who we said we were. I'm sorry. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land, here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command that air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Donald Trump has branded himself a traitor to everything this country has ever stood for. We have already acted against him in the streets and in the courts. We will remove him. We will welcome you again. We will even again let you think that you are getting more from us, even though history proves in generation after generation, with nationality after nationality, that it is us who are getting everything from you. And until that day, we, the citizens of the United States, beg your forgiveness. It's time for Donald Trump to resign as president. Admittedly, it's been an interesting couple of days, but for any patriotic American capable of adding 2 and 2 and not getting 1.5 million, this is enough. If you voted for Trump, or you support him now, or you're saying give him a chance, again, I'm not going to yell at you or call you names. I'm not going to try to argue any policies. I'm not going to debate the size of his crowds, nor whatever your conclusions are about Saturday's marches. In fact, I'm going to compliment you on your generosity toward him and the sincerity of your belief in his promises and your natural, your commendable desire to see him and thus see our country succeed. But this man is not of sound mind. In office, faster and more frighteningly than at any point in the campaign, over the span of just a long weekend, really, Trump has proved that not only will he lie to America about anything big or small, but that just as importantly, he will lie to himself about anything big or small. And more troubling yet, he will compel men, weaker even than himself, to lie on his behalf about anything big or small. And worst of all, the lies will convince some people, and they will convince one person especially dangerous in particular, Donald Trump. Because what Trump does not believe cannot be true. And that way lies madness, and lies every evil imaginable, including the end of this country in a literal sense, perhaps the end of civilization. Because like somebody who's strung out on drugs, or somebody who's living in a complete dreamlike state caused by profound, pulsating narcissism, he will not believe that the outcome of any of his actions could be failure or disaster, or even something that could be harmful to himself. A man who could accuse the Central Intelligence Agency of trying to undermine him and ask rhetorically of the conduct of that agency, quote, "Are we living in Nazi Germany?" A man who could do that, and then 10 days later go and stand in front of the shrine of its fallen agents and insist with a straight face, with every word he said and motion that he made suggesting he really believes this, he could say, quote, "They sort of made it sound like I had a feud with the intelligence community, and I just want to let you know the reason you're the number one stop is it is exactly the opposite." A man who could insist to those same men and women at the CIA that it stopped raining the moment he started to give his inaugural address when you saw the rain falling on him. That is the kind of man who could convince himself that it would be just fine to start a nuclear war. Because, of course, he would survive the retaliatory attack, and so would his family, and so would whatever people he thinks are his friends, or to use his word, his fans. Of course they would all survive the retaliation because he's Donald Trump, and bad things cannot happen to Donald Trump. At the CIA, Trump told the agents there that he has, quote, "a running war with the media." He does not have a running war with the media. He has a running war with reality. His reality is what he says it is. He has an advisor who came out and said Sunday that when you deliberately contradict reality, that is not lying or deceiving, but rather that's using, quoting her, alternative facts. You try alternative facts in your life for 1 hour. Let me know how it goes. Drive on whichever side of the road you want to. Stop wearing the safety glasses. Let the kids use the stove and the power tools. Write checks for money you don't have. Because ignoring the warnings and instructions is not courting a disaster, it's just a set of alternative facts. This is crazy. And even if, God willing, it never gets to the point where this kind of delusional thinking is employed during an international crisis or here at home during some kind of threat or disaster, even if Trump's ability to turn off reality like a light switch never actually threatens us and our children and all we know, what does it mean about that key promise that he made to you to unrig the system, to level the playing field, to never be beholden to Goldman Sachs as he claimed his opponent was, like he promised? Like he seemed to promise before he hired 3 people from Goldman Sachs and 1 from Wells Fargo and 1 from Rothschild Investments. You knew this before that speech at the CIA or this crazy argument about how big the crowds at the inauguration were or whether it was sunny and only he could see that it was sunny. You may have even known this before you voted for him and you just hoped it was going to go away when he took over. But it isn't going away. It's getting worse. He's crazy. We will all be lucky to survive having had him in charge. And even if we do survive, it will still be the greatest crisis of our lives, all our lives. Look, I don't want a President Pence, but I will take him and his policies. And I'll fight the policies, but the man, we can debate the man in 2020 in the election. This is not about policies or conservative or liberal or rigged systems or marches or making America great again. This is about a man not in his right mind who now has nuclear weapons. It is the greatest crisis of all of our lives right now. But together we can fix it peacefully. He just has to resign, or if he won't, there are provisions for the Republicans to remove him because he is so sick. We can fix it, and then we can sleep at night again. And you and I can go back to yelling at each other about politics and enjoying ourselves again.